All right, so first up we have the portfolio site of Carlos, and we've got Carlos in the house over there. So if there's anything, like as we're going through it, if you want to make a note or a shout out or talk about your decision making process with that, please do. But what I intend to do is go through these sites like one by one and then go through each page. So we can take a look sort of at like what our first impression is and then kind of record the user experience of us visiting this site for the first time, which will be great feedback for you, Carlos, as to sort of the usability of what it is that you have created here and for what audience, right? Um, so the first thing that I notice is that we've got sort of this rotating banner image here. This being your home page, this is what I like to call the high value real estate area, which means that when someone comes to your site, you pretty much can only guarantee that they're going to see this first snapshot, because from here they have a few choices. One is to navigate if you've provided a clear path to your content and provide a clear path to where they might want to be going within your site. They could scroll if they choose to do so to see if there's additional content on the page, which here there's not, or they could click off, right? They could decide, no, I don't really, want to go any further than this space right here. So because of that, like, you have an opportunity within this area to really do so much. This should be your most engaging content in your entire site. It should be the welcome, the invitation, and the basically the engagement point. So what I'd say to you here, Carlos, is that like the banner images, they're interesting and the movement is dynamic, but you're really not maximizing the use of this space. You have this real tiny little tagline here that tells me you're a content creator and a media strategist, except there's really nothing on this page that backs that up in terms of the content, right? So I get these like slideshow of you sort of like with your graduation or you traveling, but there's nothing here showing Carlos doing what he says that he does, which is content creation and media strategy. Now I know, because I know you, that you're really into doing videos and whatnot, but there's nothing here from this initial snapshot that gives me any idea about what you're about, and that's a missed opportunity, right? So as you continue to work on this, and please note that the first time, you guys, that you'll start to formally work on your portfolio websites, if you're not informally doing it already, is going to be in editing for the web with Libby, which immediately precedes Portfolio 3. Portfolio 3, this is their revision of the site that they started in Libby's class, right? So this is like take two formally. But you will continue to work on this site over and over and over again. And I'd like to say just during your time in MCBS, but that's not true, right? Because just like a resume, your portfolio is a snapshot in time, and it is a reflection of your skills and what it is that you want to do in the media communications industry. If this is not an accurate reflection of Carlos or his skills or what he wants to do, then he's not going to get the type of inquiries or contacts or views that he's trying to get by showing this content. So next I'm going to go over to the biography. So here we have just a short little bio, tells a little bit that you're in school and what you'd like to do. So this part here is pretty pivotal. I want to help companies develop social media and help them with publicity campaigns, right? So to me, like, this, I have a question about it, because here I don't see any of your video work yet, and so I'm still like, well, that's a little bit of a disconnect between who I know you to be and who you're presenting yourself to be here. Now it could be that you're like, nah, the video is personal stuff and this is how I want to professionally make money, and that's cool to make that distinction, right? But I want you to be intentional about that.
Yeah, I did put there. It was like, of course, I started this the last month,
Mm-hmm.
but like I wanted like to reach the part when I get money from the videos on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I didn't include it there. When for me, it's also like when it become economical resource for me, the videos. So that's when I wanted to include it there.
Sure. But can I ask if you're making money doing social media campaigns right now and publicity campaigns?
And now I have to.
Okay, Cool. I'm hoping that I see that under projects here. Is that where you've listed? Okay, so we're going to jump there.
I just don't have it there because it happened this month.
That's okay. I mean, like I said, you're constantly going to be updating this with, because you're always going to be getting new and cool projects. I think you're working with Melvin on something too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was one of the new goals that I had because one of them I didn't reach it, so I switched it.
Okay. Yep. So, you know, that once it gets going and you start to develop content for that site, like obviously this would be a place where you could capture that and promote the work you're doing there. So here I am scrolling over these, and as I hover, I see that it says interviews, right? So I'm going to click on it.
Yeah, but it doesn't open to the interview.
But it doesn't open to the interview. Why not?
I was trying to put it.
Okay, so functionally speaking here, if this is an interview, obviously I want to see the interview. So instead of what looks like here that you've created a gallery and put basically a thumbnail of the interview in there, and then when I click on it, it sort of brings up this light box effect, and I get a bigger like screenshot of, you know, the thumbnail for the interview. Functionally speaking, what needs to happen is that each of these interviews the video needs to be embedded on the page, and not just embedded on the page without any context, right? I need to understand what it is you're showing me, because if I'm busy, I'm a hiring manager, I really just want to check out, Carlos, if you have the chops to do the thing that I need you to do. I need a title, I need a description of the video, and I need to know the full roles that you played in this, right? So not just, you know, I'm the on-camera, you know, interviewer guy, but like if you edited the video, if you did any of the pre-production work, all of this is very dense, keyword-rich content that allows me to fully understand your skill set and the value that you're going to bring to any project that we work on together. Does that make sense? Cool. And then for contact, so here just a simple form, let's connect, but let's connect on what, right? Like give maybe like a little more of a specific call to action. Who are you looking to contact you, right? What kinds of projects do you want to get involved with? Who do you want to collaborate with? It's really important to be specific, so someone, you know, so that you can start to discern whether or not someone's going to be a good fit there. Does that make sense? Okay. Next up, we have Tasia. Is Tasia here? All right, well, I'm going to still do this because I'm recording it, and I'm going to give her this feedback virtually anyway. So one of the things that I see here on Tasia's site that, you know, it's not the same on Carlos's is a little bit of a branding aspect, right? So she's got a logo up here. It is a little small. I know that the resolution on these big cinema displays kind of condenses and shrinks things down a little bit because it looks a little bigger on my screen. But my recommendation is to make this more of a focal point or a design focal point at that smaller size. You know, I can see when I'm looking at it that it is a T and a T, but this yellow outline is really hard to see. Yeah, right? So it's really hard to see, and it just makes that edge look blurry, and it just is kind of like forgotten there. So she's got a little tagline there, which is never stupid, always stupendous, which is kind of fun and quirky, and you know, her part, like that kind of fits her brand, it fits her personality. And so, you know, I'm always going to tell you guys to really try to embody your spirit. Like being professional doesn't mean boring, right? But it does, you have to find that good balance between, you know, really communicating authentically who you are and sort of who you want to show up to be in whatever kind of work environment or work you want to do. So again, for Tasia here, this is her homepage. Hey there, thanks for visiting my portfolio. Please hover over the menu to make your selection. Can't wait to hear from you. Anytime that you have to give instructions about what to do on a website, like you've missed the boat, right? Because this is intuitive. Like if you haven't labeled your links in such a way that I intuitively know that I need to hover over this and then select something, like I don't need a step-by-step instruction, right? And so there's no content here on the homepage. It's basically like, here's instructions how to get to the next page. Why are you making me work that hard? Right? Why do you want to put up barriers to your visitors to get the thing that they want to get on your site, which is your content, which is to see what you can do? Right? So a lot of folks struggle with, well, first of all, struggle making something for themselves because there's that idea that we want it to be perfect, and you wrestle with this because it's for you. You're just going to constantly tweak it forever. whether like if it was for a client instead, you'd have much more of a direction to go on and then feedback to apply towards that direction, but it's harder to do it for yourself. People struggle with, what do I put on the homepage of my own site? Because like on my about page is where I put the bio. It stands to reason, if this site is about you, then the homepage can just be about you. You don't need a separate about page. You can welcome people to your site. You can give a short bio. You can give the tagline or the, your service offerings or what you want to get into, or maybe just like do a featured project, like the one that you've worked on latest, like the latest news or the latest happenings or your latest collaboration, something, to fill that space and to be engaging, right? And to make people want to like click further to find out more about what you can want and about you and what you can do. So on the about, we're going to jump here. So just so we got a little slideshow here, which is cool. And then an about. So, like this looks like pretty dense paragraph. There's like not a lot of spacing. I'm going to draw this out with my tools here, my screenshot tools. I would maybe like to see the content not go outside of this. Can you guys see that I've like kind of sketched out there? That's called breathing room, right? So like make sure that the content that is on your page has almost like a bubble wrap around it so that it's not butting up against the edges of that container that it's in, right? So I would also say here that this title, maybe it's a little too close here. Everything, like the cool thing about websites, guys, is that like you can like extend it down pretty much in like for infinity. So don't feel like you need to squish everything together. I'm going to go jump to projects. So interestingly, I hover over projects and I have video projects, and I'm going to see how that translates. Again, this all looks sort of pretty condensed up here, and there's no padding between the content and this container that it's in. So I'd like to see maybe that's come out a little bit more. So click here for video projects. But what am I like? Okay, I'm trying to click on these, but I can't. So these are projects I've taken for artists. The artwork has been featured on these things. All right. So these are projects that she's taken on for artists, but like I don't really know what the project is, and I can't even click on it to get a larger view of it, right? So like she's taken on this project, but I don't know what this is, right? Like I'm trying to click on it. I know what it is because she showed this to me in Portfolio too, and it's album artwork, right? But she has not given me the context, if I am a stranger, to understand what I'm looking at, and either that she did the the photos for this, that she did the graphics on top of it. Like I don't understand fully what she did for this artist, and therefore I don't fully understand what she can do for me as a new client, right? So missed opportunity there. I'm going to click here for video projects. And so here I have just a few that I can choose from. I like that these are embedded on the page, that I don't have to go somewhere else to get them. You want to make things as accessible, as immediately accessible as possible, so that people aren't having to go step to step to finally get the content. But I would like to see here a title, a description, a full explanation of what her role was on this, because certainly with some of these videos, she wasn't the only person on the set, or she wasn't the only person who did all of this. But just showing this video like this kind of begs the question, did you do all of it? If you did, definitely claim that you did all of it, right? So that I fully understand all of the work that goes into a media project like this. Because you guys take for granted because everyone in here does media, but everyone out there doesn't do media, and they don't know how much work this stuff is, how much work a 3-minute video that doesn't look like crap actually is. It's a lot of work. All right, claim that work. You guys did it. Make sure that you detail everything. And that also lets people know that it's a multi-dimensional project that goes in phases: pre-production, production, post, and it illuminates the process. And that's important because when you're charging what you're going to be charging to do this work, people are like, what? You're going to charge this for a 3-minute video? And you're like, yeah, because I do A, B, C, and D, and then all the way to X, Y, Z on this project, right? It helps people understand your value and your worth. So I'm going to go here to work and volunteer history. So here it's just sort of like a little, almost like a little resume-ish, which is cool because we got a lot of keyword content, and it shows that, you know, she has a long history of like philanthropic volunteering. She's got her education. You know, I see here that she's got her skills, and they're kind of like just mostly like soft skills. I would maybe like to see if she's going to include that technical skills as well. Anytime you can say that I know how to use Premiere, or that I have, you know, this particular kind of camera or equipment, that's also really important, because then people know like, oh, well, you know, this person has the ability to jump in on this project and be effective in this way. I'm going to jump last to contact. And so here, so we've got some testimonials, which is cool. But what I'll say about testimonials is this. They're great for showing outside support from your clients or your professors or your bosses. But this is quite a bit of text, and it's scrolling like fairly quickly. My recommendation would be to get it down to more of like a sound bite, right? So a shorter, and you have the opportunity, because it's sort of an interesting bit of content, to do something different to it, to call it out visually in a different way, and not make it look just like every other bit of text on your site. Just like on, let's say, restaurant sites, where the owner of the restaurant has cherry-picked all of the good reviews to put on the page. We know that all of these testimonials about Tasia are going to say that she's like the shit, right? Because like, why would you put it on your page if it didn't like support, you know, your skills in that way? So I know that they're all saying the same thing. So am I going to sit here and watch them all like, you know, pass by and then try to read everyone? Probably not, right? So thinking about how a user might spend a little bit more time with this is to, one, maybe make it look a little bit more visually interesting. Two, like stream it down a little bit, so it's not a paragraph, but maybe it's like the most impactful sentence within that paragraph. And then three, pepper it throughout the site. So instead of just like one lump thing of like, here's a whole bunch of things that says Tasia's great, maybe it's just like one quote about Tasia like on each page. Instead, like, because I might be more apt to just like my eyes are flowing on the different pages to read that, rather than sit here and watch the slideshow go by. Next up, we have Luciana. So this is a very, very pretty, welcoming page. You know, what I'll say though is that this is pretty Wix standard, right? So this is a template, because, you know, Wix and any other content management system, they organize their templates by like, this one would be great for photographers, and this one would be great for like if you're getting married, and this one is a good one for a portfolio site, right? And so a lot of students initially are like, oh, here's a good one for a portfolio site. But then what you don't realize is you basically have the same portfolio site as everybody else, right? And so like, to the extent, like, this is certainly fine as a starting point to start to organize your content, but this doesn't fit with the brand of the resume that you turned in, right? So visually, the look and feel of the resume that you gave me doesn't match this.
You'll see that I passed everything.
I will keep looking. Is this what you want me to see? Okay, so this is your resume information, which is great, right? But I mean, your brand extends beyond what we see here, because you have a version of your resume that you're going to email out to people, and that resume doesn't match this. Do you know what I'm saying? Because visually, the topography is different. That one is very monochromatic with grays and blacks, and this is very warm and kind of got like honey colors. So it's night and day between the two. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying they're different, and that is not what branding is, right? So I'm going to go back to the home page. We have a really nice inviting picture of you. That my big problem with this template is that basically right here on this page, they give me multiple ways to get to the same content, right? So like resume, my work, projects, like, so it's just duplicative, right? Unless you could point me in, if you have enough content to point me in different spots. My recommendation is not to just give me multiple ways to get to the same content on the same page. So I'm going to go to resume. And here we see just a nice little summarization of your professional experience, your work experience. One of the things that I see, guys, a lot is that instead of leveraging this online space, this interactive medium to put your content into and to lay it out and arrange, students want to pixel perfect and ensure the visual design of the resume by screenshotting a document and then putting a picture of those words on the page instead, right? And that is not good. It's not good for a couple of reasons. One, when you screenshot or you turn like text into an image, there's a compression that happens on it, right? Which makes the text just a little bit more blurry and a little bit harder to read. So that decreases the usability. It strains my eyes. It's, you know, it's microscopic at times, but you can note the clarity of like selectable text on a page like this here. I can, when I say selectable text, I mean I could copy and paste it. So there is that discrepancy between a picture of words and words on a page, right? The other thing is that when you screenshot a whole bunch of words, you lose the keyword-rich content because Google and other search engines can no longer recognize that as text. It's a picture, right? It's a collection of pixels that form letters, and those letters form words that our human eyes can see, but Google does not recognize that the same way. And so it no longer can help your portfolio site get to where it needs to be in search engine results page because it doesn't recognize the content on your page. So this is like a heads up. So like if you're in port 1 or port 2 and you're like, okay, I'm getting a version of my resume together, and but I want to make sure that some of that content is on my portfolio website, there are ways that you can lay your content out on your portfolio that is complementary, that mimics, or that could possibly even like matches perfectly your print version of your resume or your digital document version of your resume, right? But what you cannot do is screenshot that and put that on the page instead. So this part over here, you'll just need to either update that or delete it. So that's also like a big thing that I see early on when you guys are working on your portfolio websites is that you choose these templates, which is fine and great, and I promise you your website is going to change probably 3 or 4 times between now and when you graduate. And like I encourage you just even take a screenshot of this right now and then marvel in like a year at the ways that you've probably changed it since then. But no content is better than placeholder content, right? And so I don't know if you do have HTML, CSS, and PHP, but I'm thinking that okay, exactly. So, and that's the other sort of danger with templates is that like you see the content there and you might think like, oh, I'll get back to it, or maybe you don't even see it and recognize that you have to update that. I had a student a couple of months ago who used a real pretty template for her print resume, and she printed everything out and brought it to me to prove, like she had a box of them from Kinko's and she like wanted me to proof it, and I'm like, I'm looking at the top of it and it's like somebody else's name and address at the top, and it was just from the template that she forgot to like go in and put her own information in. And so like word of advice, make sure when you're using templates that you're going in and like you might I mean, like you do speak multiple languages, so maybe this section doesn't talk about the coding languages. You know, maybe this is Spanish and English and, you know, whatever else that you want to put there. This is really just, these templates are meant to show you what could be there, but you have to ask, like, what should be there for me? Let's see here, projects. So we're gonna go, you've got your infographic here. What I'm loving to see about this is this, right? So this is what I'm talking about. She has labeled that this isn't, what she's trying to show me is that this is an infographic that she has created, and it was made for graphic design, and it was an original design in Illustrator. So this tells me a few things: that she knows graphic design, that she's taken a class in it, that she knows how to make infographics, and that she knows how to use Illustrator, right? What I would like to see is maybe this blown up like a light box effect, if you can, so I can see it a little bit bigger. So same thing with this, like that you have included the title. So video portrait is kind of like a generic title. That's like what the assignment was in class. Like, what is the title of this piece, right? This is like one of your favorite or best pieces of work. It's probably not just called video portrait, but like, who is this about? Who is it about? Okay, and that's like more compelling, right? Like that's tell me who it is or give me some sort of context, because that's a more engaging story point than sort of like the generic title there. So we've got your host, which is great. Like this, your portfolio is showing a ton of diversity already, and like that's great. And I really can appreciate that you have selected a few projects to show me here, because a portfolio is not a catch-all. Right? In the beginning, you might struggle to think, oh, what am I going to put on this? Maybe I'll just put all of my school projects. It's fine for the start, but a portfolio is a curated experience. It's not like, look at everything I've done, even the bad stuff. It is, let me show you what I'm capable of, and let me show you the types of projects that I want to continue to work on. Right? So instead of 9, show me 3. But detail the 3. Right? But show me 9 if you have 9 like excellent ones too, right? But like, well, it depends. I mean, it depends, right? Like, so if she's so like you might have graphic design projects where you're trying to show me like several on a theme. That's fine. Shane has like you know, tons of different types of photography. I don't need to see every headshot he's ever done. I don't want to. I want to see his, like, what he thinks is the best headshots, and then I want to see what he thinks are his best editorial. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So like kind of within a category, be choosy on that. And then contact. So the other thing too is like a lot of people are like, well, the contact is just like this simple page. Well, if it's so simple, maybe you don't need a page for it, because we also have all of this contact information down here at the bottom, right? And it's like available on every page. I'm not saying you should have one or the other, but if it, you know, like if you only have just this tiny bit of material on this page, maybe this suffices at the bottom there. Next up, we have Dylan's site. So his is photography. What I'll say about when you start to layer typography and imagery, you need to make sure that there is adequate color contrast between the type that you've chosen and the image, right? So we can see that his name kind of gets obscured a little bit because of where it lands on this image. And that's going to be different, guys, like depending upon like the screen width size, right? That's right. So that's a good fix, right? So you could lower the opacity to make this darker, or maybe kind of like put a shadow over the top of it. Or, you know, if you have the ability, you could put like a little shadowing on the text to make it kind of give it some dimension or stick out. But that's a usability thing, right? So like if I can't see your text, I can't read your text, it's not usable text. Something to think about. So one thing about Dylan's is that notice that when I scroll, his name and photography disappear. And so at this point, like the site is somewhat generic, except I kind of see his name over here to the side, right? Like this is the identity, it is the brand. Don't kind of, like in English we read from left to right. So your identification should either be up in the left hand side of the header or in the center, right? This kind of seems like an afterthought a little bit, right? So as we scroll down, we see some of like his photos and some of his work, which is cool. I'm going to click on one and see what happens. Okay, so because my mouse turned into this little hand, it made me think as a user that there was a functionality, that is a link of some kind, right? And so when I click on it, I thought that something would happen, but nothing is happening. So that's a disconnect between what I think and what is happening, right? So either there's a functionality here that he's not taking advantage of, or these shouldn't be linked in some, way that it is. What I would recommend with some of for you photographers out there is to organize your photography into categories or sections of work, right? So if you do headshots, if you do nature, if you do editorial, if you do fashion, kind of give us these categories so we can get that idea of what your aesthetic is. And then if you have like a shoot that you want to feature, or you want to talk about either your process or how you prepared for it, or anything involved in that, you can kind of contextualize a larger body of work by doing that. I'm going to go here to skate. And so here it's a show reel. So I like the background image here, but again, like I'm running into the issue that the text is a little bit harder to read as I scroll through different parts of this. So something to be mindful. I do think sort of just like a shadow effect over the top of this would help there. So all video credits go to Brian, and that this was filmed over a week. So this is an interesting thing to comment on here, is that Dylan is showing a video that Brian did, that everything on this is Brian's. So it begs the question, like, why am I looking at this on Dylan's page, right? Because Dylan's the skater, right? But so there needs to be a more easily established connection between those things, right? Because here on the homepage, he talks about being a photographer, right? There's not much here, like there's some skate kind of content, but I don't know that he is the skater or a skater. There's nothing that really...
If you watch the video, you get that.
Which video? This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't watch it right off the bat because it's not the first thing that I get to and form those questions before I even get to this page, right?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're confused about like if who the content of the video is about. But I mean, even on the side, I talk about how none of this would have ever been happened if it hasn't been for skateboarding being the first start stone and like the art in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian made a video on me, and the whole video. I mean, Brian's not even in the video. He doesn't even talk in the video. It's nothing with me. He just made the video for me.
Which is awesome, and I do think that there is a very important place for this on your site here. To me, this would be more like the introduction of who you are on the homepage, right? So it talks about who you are, what your inspirations are, and how you kind of get moved into your place of photography and sort of like your place of art. And so I do see that there is a connection, but what I'm suggesting is that it's kind of you're reordering things a little to usher me through this experience with fewer questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Just agree to disagree, I guess. I like where the home is for the photography. I thought about changing the actual label of the home to photography, and I really don't know why the pictures aren't why they're clickable or clickable. But that is, you're right about that. I noticed that. I was noticing that a few times ago myself. But the only thing really I want to do besides trying to figure out
that, and also like you're saying, organizing our photos. And I really don't have a category except for like candid, like pictures of people don't realize I'm taking them. But trying to find a way to categorize to put them under like a label.
So, and I think this is kind of an important conversation too, because it's like, and this is a conversation for everybody, and that is, what's the point of your portfolio? Or what's the point of this site? And that's something that everybody's going to need to answer. And for like some of you, it might be like, I want to get hired. And for some of you, it might be, I just want a place to show my work, right? And neither one of those, there's no right or wrong way to answer that, because ultimately what you're doing is you're building something for yourself to be able to leverage it in whatever way is most effective for you, right? Yes?
Sorry. But there was many ways for him to do this, right? He doesn't need to put the video in the first page. He can say, like, in this page about me, and then show the introduction of him in another page if he doesn't want to put this video in the first
There are
page.
absolutely many ways that this can be accomplished. So another part of this disconnect, like if this video is all about Dylan and all about everything he is, like I would think maybe it might be here on the about page, because the way that it's labeled skate, I can't intuitively make that connection without reading and going through and watching every single thing. And what we all know, because this is all of our user behavior, is that we quickly scan things and we make split-second decisions based on how things are titled or how they're laid out. So what I'm suggesting is knowing that this is user behavior online in this sort of interactive medium is to not make it difficult for people, like to lay the content out or to label it in such a way that they can make a more informed decision about how to navigate and how to get that content. Does that make sense? Jen?
I think what Emily's trying to say is that, and I've seen the video, I think if that video was on the homepage, like you got them, like that person's gonna stay on your page and they're gonna want to know what else is there, you know, as opposed to like opening up with the home and like, you know, okay, like yeah, there's pictures, there's all kinds of things, but with that video, like you've got
It's heart. That's the heart, right? Like that's his personality. Like there's no denying.
I want you to amazing.
These are just some thoughts, but again, and so like this is all great feedback and it's all great ideas, but it all depends on what Dylan wants to do with this, right? Like if Dylan just wants like a spot for him to like share some of his stuff, like there's less of a need for like this kind of strategic placement of things, right? If he's not trying to put all this stuff out there because he wants people to, you know, just like hire him to do, you know, whatever. Right. Right. Like if they just want to like go and see what Dylan's all about, but if they want to like hire him to do like street photography or candid photography or skate photography, like, you know, there's nothing here that really says that he does that for hire. Right? This could just be like, I'm showing you what I do. Or, you know, this is an amazing video. And this is like, I love the way that this page looks, like with the skateboard and all of that. And to me, this is where the heart, like, of this is. And from here, I want to like go and see more about what Dylan is about. And so what I'm suggesting is this is the hook, as you were saying. I'm going to jump over here to jobs and education. So here we just see a little bit about where you've worked. You know, one thing to note is I like the inclusion of the logos and stuff, so it adds like, you know, like some quick like brand recognition, like, oh, you worked here, oh, you worked there. But I do see some stylistic departures just in terms of like typography, right? So this sort of condensed all caps, I don't see that same type elsewhere on the site. Here you have something that's a bit more formal looking because it's like a serif font. You know, just to note that there is a shift in style between those things. Also, the all caps is a little bit, it's more difficult to read and it's definitely more difficult to scan. Our eyes are used to kind of recognizing the starts and ends of sentences based on capitalization. So this, and especially because of the condensed nature of the type, becomes a little bit more like one of those word search games, like where you're trying to like find the words in the collection of letters. It's great keyword rich content, but it might be more effective if you want to include this to choose a font that's less condensed. Last but not least, we've got the About page. So here, just a little bit about you. I like the image. I feel like that's you. I really like when you guys include pictures of yourselves that are like you doing what you do. So obviously the skate video is important to Dylan, but like and like the way that Luciana has a lot of pictures of her, not on her site that I saw, but like, you know, you have a lot of pictures of you like recording Funky Time and being in production, like those types of things, showing yourself out there doing the things, not just like a glamour shot or something, is a cooler representation of yourself and kind of what you're doing out there in the world of media. One note, also a usability consideration, is that anytime you have paragraph text as sort of defined by sentences that are going on to multiple lines, is that you're going to want to left align that text for better and easier readability. When it's centered like that, there's a different starting point on each line, which is more taxing for our eyes when we get to the end of one to try and find the beginning of that next line. It might cause us to jump around a little bit. And then maybe some paragraph breaks between, it looks like maybe this could be a new paragraph, as could this. So left align and then put like a carriage return in there to just give a little space in that area. What I love to see about these sites, guys, is that it's such like a good start. Like, and for you to be doing this now, and you're basically at the halfway point in Portfolio 3, you are really starting to wrestle with some important things, some important questions about how, you want to showcase yourself moving forward. And asking those questions about like, what is this for? That's process. The finish, tie a bow on it at the end where you're like, this site is like exactly how I want to characterize myself and my professionalism or my art. That is the product, right? The wrestling with that is the process. Last but not least, we have Tia's page here. So what I'm seeing is we have some paragraph placeholder text here, right? So like no content here on the home page. Couple of like just stark, like really beautiful like images here, but no idea at all about the purpose of this site, right? So it's the official website, but like I don't know what capacity, right? Like I don't know that this is a portfolio site. If it is a portfolio site, maybe it's a modeling site. I don't know. But there's nothing here on this home page, which is the high value real estate area, to give me the heads up about that, right? So I should have some idea when I come to your portfolio of like what it's all about. And like when I click around more, like I can dig deeper into these areas to find out more about you and what it is that you're sharing. So we're on the About page right now, but there's no real about information. So definitely an opportunity there to introduce us to yourself and to what you want us to know about you. Social. So this is some work experience. So I don't know that I would like intuitively think that social is what I would label this page, right? So part of content strategy on a website has to do with creating an intuitively labeled path in your navigation so that people, your users, can make, like when they click on something, have a pretty good idea of the content they're going to find there, right? And so yes.
Can I ask you a thing? Which month do we learn the basis of how to create a website?
Editing for the web would be probably your first organized experience. Most of you come into your portfolio experience already having some dabbled in, either content management systems or having a blog or, a few of these things. what you'll learn in editing for the web are principles, right? You will learn best practices for how to think about your content strategy and how to lay all of that out, right? Editing for the web is not about, let me teach you how to use Wix. These are tools, right? So what we say is create a web page, but use the principles and use whatever tool you want. Use Adobe Spark, use WordPress, use whatever, because it doesn't matter the tool. It matters how you are.
Because sometimes we have a great ideas, you know, but we don't know how to use the basis. So how do we put these ideas, you know, in an actual website or?
I know. So like that, I mean, do we remember that video that we watched in the last portfolio session called The Gap that identifies, you guys have great taste. You wouldn't be here in media communications if you didn't have like cool ideas and you know, how you want to present yourselves and your work. But there's a gap between your taste and your ideas and your ability to bring those things to life. And this section here is hard work, study, tutorials, asking questions, and iterating on your work all of the time. You're going to have to do like 20 bad web pages or 20 bad versions of a graphic design before you start to see your own progress in that area. And so because in this degree program, we are, like I said, taste testing, we're dabbling, right? We're not getting, this isn't a degree that's about design, so you have a few classes that talk about principles of design, but overall we talk about strategy and production and design and a whole bunch of different things. So if you want to dig deeper into certain areas, the onus, the responsibility, and the opportunity is on you. Right? You have a lot of great mentors, whether it's, you know, your peers and your cohort members who may know something more and can teach you, or it could be your instructors, right? Where you specifically are trying to do this thing. But we can't support technically, and when I say tech, I mean like tech support every available tool out there. Like I can't be a Wix expert, a WordPress expert, a coding expert, a portfolio expert, a social media expert. Like I can be your guide with foundational principles and help you with whatever tools that you have. But sometimes that will require you seeking something beyond one of us. Maybe it's, and I do this all the time too. Like I can dabble in certain programs. Like I'm not an audio person, but I've found myself needing to do some audio stuff recently. And I'm like gonna fire up that old GarageBand, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I know how to record this. I know how to do some simple edits on it. I can cut this, I can do the fade out, but there's like more things that I wanna do, right? So what are my options? I can go talk to Robert, and he would laugh at me for using GarageBand and probably turn me away. I could go ask one of you guys because you probably know more than I do about audio. It's just not even my thing at all. Or I could ask Google, like specifically what it is that I want to do. And I can't tell you how many times over the last week that I've just gone to Google and I said, how do I do blah, 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 blah. And then I see a tutorial, I watch it for 2 minutes, I go back to the application and I'm better. You know, like I know better how to do that thing that I wanted to do. I'm still not Robert. But here's the thing, I know I don't want to be Robert. And that's part of my process. I want enough to make me effective in kind of creating the audio that I need for whatever. And so to the extent that you might have a similar experience with web design or graphic design or anything, like that's the important part, is to ask those questions. When Google can't do it, to come see one of us. When we can't do it, we send you to that other next person, or find someone who is more skilled at that area that you need. Does that make sense?
For example, for me, when I search like in tutorials, for me it's like so many things, so many options to watch. I don't know where to begin.
I would like the very first one.
Yeah?
Because that's usually the best.
Well, no, that's not always the case, because if you didn't ask a good question, it's not like,
Oh, okay.
right?
Okay.
So like, if you do a general search,
I wish I had somebody, to teach me the basis, before I watch the tutorials.
okay. Well, so like, yeah.
Yeah, but I understand everything. For example, just for me to talk, sometimes it's hard because the words doesn't come out as faster as Portuguese, for example,
Mhm.
but I can understand perfectly.
Yes. So, like, for instance, if you're very curious about web design and you're only in which portfolio now?
One.
One? Okay. But you want to know more, like, go talk to Libby. Ask Libby. She's the editing for the web teacher.
Okay.
You know, like, or if you have a specific question about something, come see me. Like, set up some time where, you know, like, we can take a look at something specifically, or I can turn you on to a resource. We also, I mean, and I know that this probably isn't used extensively, but I don't care. I'm still collecting all of this stuff. The MCBS Diigo library is a place where instructors are like saving articles and resources and tutorials and stuff that is a wonderful supplement, and we tag them by topic, right? So if it was audio, I'd tag it audio, and I'd tag Robert's class. You know, and if it was web, I'd attach anything like usability, navigation, whatever the article was about, and tag it web and tag the web class. So what you can do is go in there to the Diigo library, hit web, and it will show you everything that your instructors have found that they think like, this is good material, this is an important article.
Yeah, I just asked that, you know, I'm sorry if I'm taking
No, it's fine.
some time, you know, because when I look at these websites, I see the same or some similar difficulty, you know,
Sure.
in their websites. It's not only me, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, and this is it will be a struggle for many of you moving forward. But again, and this is what Roxanne and I said at the beginning, is that there is something that happens, right? Like you're just in port one, so it might feel like nebulous or like, is this ever going to come to fruition? Will this ever solidify into something that feels like me or that like I want to carry to the next iteration? The answer is yes, but it requires you to continue to go back and touch it and push it and move it forward. Keep coming back to portfolio.
Thank you.
Keep asking your question.
Yeah, this is their first draft. It's not going to be.
That's right.
What you're saying, Emily, about going from don't let perfect get in the way of good,
Yeah.
and great. It's an iteration.
Mhm.
It's an iteration, and receiving feedback and constantly looking at because it's not individual. Like with Dylan's feedback,
Mhm.
that's going to apply to everybody. That's going to apply to everybody. Carlos's feedback applies to everybody because, as you just said, you see it. You already see it. So all of you should all be listening so that maybe it'll be avoided, but it'll be to that next iteration. It won't be a basic,
Mhm.
but it'll be the next level.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to just continue here with Tia's real quick just to finish this out. I think maybe experience might be a more intuitive title for this section because you talk about, you know, where you've worked and your education. So I'm not sure that social really fits right there. Under projects, and I just want to say I really like the red and sort of robin egg blue you've got going on here. It's pretty cool. So projects, don't really see anything here yet. This is interesting conversation as well, you guys. For someone who does photography, who does videography, who has a visual output for their work, a portfolio site, it might be a little bit easier to conceptualize because I know I'm going to put my photos, my videos, my like graphics all over the place, and there you go, there are my projects. But Tia does a lot of marketing related stuff, and she has been spending a lot of time in a very strategic realm. So how do you show strategy? Like how could I create a site as maybe a social media strategist or a PR professional that showcases what I do? This is a question for the group. Rick? If I don't have a visual output for my professional work, I'm not a photographer, I'm not a videographer, and maybe I do strategy related work. Maybe I'm a PR person. Like, what the hell am I going to put on my portfolio website? I have a hand over here if you want to stall.
I kind of have the question first.
Okay.
She does branding and advertising, or just
I don't know. It doesn't say. But what I do know about Tia is that she does a lot of marketing And so that's sort of the line of thinking that I'm going on.
Carlos.
Maybe just like a logo of like a company that they helped, and then a description of saying what they did.
Okay. I'm liking where you're going with that.
Put like her sales.
She can do what?
Put like her sales up there.
Her sales?
Yeah, so.
Okay, so sales analytics. Okay, so this is what I want you guys to be thinking about. If you're like, well, this might be me because I'm not a photographer or like a graphic designer. If you have strategy related work, think about case studies, right? So there might be a marketing campaign, there might be a social media campaign, there might be some other effect that Tia does with her work where she can show, I worked with this company, this is what, this is where they started. This is the strategy that I recommended for them. This is how we executed that plan. This is the results of the plan that we executed as confirmed, supported, proven by the analytics or the before and after or how many new followers I have or increased sales. Because she's able to show her effectiveness in strategy if she can show the before and after. Does that make sense, guys? One person who's going to be doing this with her portfolio website coming up is Stacy Blake, right? So she does a lot of social media stuff. If you'll recall, she won a big award at Hall of Fame for her leadership from the social media team. But like, how does she show the effect that she had? And it's going to be through the documentation of a campaign in terms of a case study. If you have questions about that, maybe Google her site and check out an example. Last but not least, we just have a contact page here. Simple contact form. But again, I don't know what I should contact you about at this point. So certainly there's a lot of opportunity. You have a really beautiful canvas. I know you have a lot of skills and talents and you're a tremendously hard worker. But I am hypothesizing that maybe you ran into a little bit of a block as to what the heck do I include on my portfolio website if I don't have these visual assets. And for those of you who are ramping up to portfolio 3, if you don't know, sort of like, if you can't say, I'm a photographer or I'm a videographer or any of these things yet, that's okay. Because your portfolio can also take an educational bent, right? So you can choose to have an educational portfolio, which is basically, let me show you my journey through MCBS, right? It's designed to show growth over time. And that's, if you aren't ready to kind of characterize yourself any other way besides being a student, that's perfectly acceptable too. Does anybody have any questions about sort of portfolios, the product in general? Any of you from portfolio 3? Because what the expectation is from here is that you take this feedback and your own evolving idea about what this can be for you and to keep working on it. Like, there's not going to be a formal check-in on this for a number of months when it's assigned to you again in another class. But I encourage you to don't just like receive this feedback today and let that be it. Because you never know when an opportunity is going to come up and someone says, hey, send me a link to your portfolio. I think that's happened to Shane a time or two recently where like he's out there, he's busting a hump. And he needs a portfolio site up and ready to show people what he can do. Roxanne, what do you got?
I have a question. Can you go back to Taya's social? I think that's where it was. And you're probably just in the beginning stages of this. But under your work experience, there's really no description of what you did. Is that coming? Because I don't know what you did for Hall of Fame, stage manager for Full Sail. Typically, when you are talking, like, yes, you put the time that you worked on it, but you also put some type of description or details. Is
Yeah, and be thinking about, guys, too, that like your portfolio sites, yes, you're making them for us to look at and give you feedback, and we have a general knowledge of who you are, that you're students, we understand what BTS means, right? But like, you need to build your site as if you're building it for a stranger, right? And a stranger doesn't know what BTS stands for, and they don't know the full extent of what it means to be a BTS tour guide. You have to tell us so that we fully understand what it is you're trying to say about your experience. Does that make sense? A lot of people say like, oh, I'm an MCBS student. Only people in MCBS know what an MCBS student is. So spell that out. Any other questions, guys? All right. I am going to turn off this archive because remember, I've been recording this the entire time. And I will process it and give it back to you guys in terms like as a link. So if you want to revisit what we talked about, you'll have the recording.